Thank you to be here. It's close to 7 p.m. in a trade show. People used to be in the bar drinking beer, but I want to say thank you to the summit team that invite all the team, all the panel, and I would like to introduce. We have 3 more speakers, and I would like to invite Natalia, CEO of PlantOnDemand. We have Cayetana, principal of Butlerton Capital. And I think that we are trying to connect with Litzy, Agri Women's Development Trust. I don't know if we have, no, we can't. Okay, technician problems. We put your hands up together for Litzy. She will see the video. Okay, in this panel, we want to focus in agriculture as every of us are involved in different areas. And I would like, in the beginning, to introduce yourself. I think maybe Cayetana, that is in Paris. Hi, Cayetana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Aaron. So my name is Kaye. I'm a principal at Butlerton Capital. Butlerton is one of the leading European multi-stage funds in Europe. And we invest in European businesses that look to become the next multi-billion category leader in whatever category they're in. So we're sector agnostic, and we invest across early stage to early growth. While we're not a sustainability-focused fund, we care a lot about this topic, and we have made several investments in the space along the years, including companies like InFarm, which is a leader precisely in vertical farming, Feast, Vestia Collective, and many others.
That's perfect. Natalia is the CEO of PlantOnDemand.
Yes. So PlantOnDemand is basically a platform, a digital platform for organic local producers. And what we do is basically we digitalize. Is it the mic?
Yeah, it's working. Yes,
okay.
It's working.
So what we do is we digitalize the commercial operations of these local and organic farmers with their clients. But we also help them to cooperate with other farmers so they can work as a unified force. This basically allows the farmers to, save a lot of time, digitize their operations, coordinate and cooperate with other farmers so they can reach bigger clients and get economies of scale, for example.
Nice.
Just to say that we've been working for 3 years now, and we work with thousands of farmers, all of them organic, and also with cooperatives.
So cool, so cool. Okay, sorry, if we can have more monitor from Natalia and Cayetana, will be perfect. I'm Aaron De Bernardis, CEO and co-founder of Knack Solutions. What we do is monitor crops with satellites, but this is not the add value. Our add value is that we introduce artificial intelligence, that we not only monitor, we learn from the crops, and we can predict what's going to happen with the crops. Till the day of today, we are in 16 countries in less than 3 years. The co-founders have the 100% of the equity. We are growing because we are in a process in the last 3 years to try to help the producers and teach that the data will help them to produce more and try to spend less fertilizer, less water, and trying to push sustainable agriculture. And the topic of today is the agriculture, how we will change this. As you know, the way that we produce, we spend a lot of water. The 70% of water that we spend in the world, the FAO say, that is in agriculture. Absolutely, I am in contact in 16 countries, and everyone, the way that they control the water is don't have metrics. We need to change the way that we produce. And I would like to Cayetana, with your seniority and your vision like an investor, could you define what is regenerative agriculture, how we can change the challenge that we have?
Sure. I mean, it's a really good question because there's so many definitions out there. And to put it super simply, Regenerative agriculture refers to all agricultural practices that aim at preserving the soil's quality and its capacity to capture and retain carbon. So there are many different methods that most often are combined together. And I don't want to take a lot of time to go into each and one of those, and maybe I just mention them, and then if you guys have questions, I'm very happy to go through that. But some of those methods include low-till or no-till systems, cover crops, rotating crops, integrating livestock so that we get to like the natural nature, if you want to call it that way, and expanding biodiversity. That's a few. Those are some of the most common, and derivatives of those that come together and help precisely to get to a healthier soil. And that today is really important because today over a quarter of the world's greenhouse gas emissions precisely from agriculture, forestry, and land use. So regenerative agriculture can have impact on the path to net zero, and to balance out precisely the amount of greenhouse gas produced and the amount that is removed and captured by these new practices from the atmosphere. So there is research shows that efficient farming practices could achieve about like 20% of the sector's required emissions by 2050. And it's obviously one of the most direct variables in humans' health and way of life. And I think it's fascinating what you, Natalia, are working on, because it's and be closer to the consumer, which the day the consumer deciding to buy into this, right? And it's where the change, where we need to see the change come from. So maybe I'll pause there, Aaron.
Yes. Perfect. Sorry, the connection was quite frozen, but yeah, I think that's a good point of view. And now, the question is why now? Why we are starting now? You know? And I would like to, Natalia, from your point of view and your experience and what you are doing in PlantOnDemand, why now? What's the problem that we can solve? How we can help in your?
Yes. Following what Cayetana was saying just now, I think we are in a moment in history where we have to act. We have to do something about all the things that are happening in the environment, right? We have a huge loss of biodiversity happening because of bad practices in agriculture, the use of pesticides, the use of chemicals that are harming the land and the soil. We have as well the climate change, which is not stopping for sure, and for which the agriculture now it's actually participating in this problem. And so we are in a situation where the world needs to adapt, needs to evolve, right? The good part of all of it is that more and more farmers are moving towards the conventional way of producing, towards a more sustainable or more regenerative or more organic way of producing. There are thousands of those farmers who have the awareness of all these techniques and that are doing it right. The problem that I see is that most of them, for now, they are very small and they are really aware of the problems environmentally. They are really capable of changing that, but they yet don't have the capacity to really have access to the market and to sell their products in good conditions. They are too small and they're too isolated. So one of the things that I believe are very important to acknowledge is that it's not only important to stimulate or to promote this organic and regenerative way of producing, but also to provide to those farmers that are doing things right with the tools that they might need so that they can thrive, right? One of the situations that I see very often when I talk with those farmers, because I have the good luck of being in touch with many of them because of my job, is that, as I was saying before, they are very isolated. They don't have the capacity to get good margins, to get access to the market. And one of the solutions that are coming up in the recent years is is cooperation.
Yeah.
So cooperation is a great way for those farmers to have access to clients that earlier they weren't able to have access to. Because just imagine you are a small farmer, right? You are doing things right. You're having the most healthy soil, you're protecting the environment as much as you can, but then you go and sell to whom? You're too small to reach, I don't know, a restaurant,
Yes.
you're too small to reach a family because you don't have enough range of products to go and knock to those doors, right? So what we see is that if groups of farmers come together and sell together so that they can have a broader catalog, right? And they can share the logistics and they can share the spaces.
Yeah.
This can escalate much more. And like this, there is a lot, like there's more ideas and more projects that are coming up in these recent years. And even in this summit, I've met quite a few that are really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's nice. In my area, that I'm how we can change that and what I can see from the market. We are actually in 16 countries. I saw different kind of. We have, for example, one customer that have 47,000 small producers, and I've been in contact in some meetings with the small producers, and it's a lot to help them, you know. Something important is that we are tech people, and we need to understand that they are not tech. And sometimes we say they need to understand, they need to learn, they need to adapt. But I think that it's our job to adapt our technology to be easy, to be helpful, to be cheaper as soon as. Something that if we check the market, the 20% of the producers in the world are big producers. They have engineers, they have teams that they can manage data, they can predict with solutions like we have. But the 80% of the producers in the world are small producers. We are in a challenge now that try to share the knowledge from the huge producer, the artificial intelligence that we can provide for the huge producers to the small producer. That's a huge challenge because you need to be so clear, you need to be so easy, and I think that from the tech side, we need to understand and learn the vocabulary. Just I put an example. We have customers that this is something practical. They do what they do because they have been doing that for the last 50 years. Literally, 50 years doing the same. Where the technology arrived to the agriculture is the machinery, big machinery, a lot of buttons, a lot of lights, air condition inside. But the data is not in the agriculture. And we think that we help to the small producer to don't have data, to have information. I think that our add value is don't provide data, is provide information to take easy solutions now. I think that, what do you think, Cayetana, about this? Are you going to invest in Knack for this solution? That's a joke.
I cannot guarantee that quite yet, but it's interesting that you both are mentioning two of the things that I wanted to talk about from an investor perspective. I think there are many, many ways in which companies can build interesting businesses that have an impact on this area. And the two, I'll touch on the other ones, but to what you both were saying, Aaron, I think the measurement and improvement of the soil's quality, leveraging precisely data collection and analysis to improve all the operational efficiency and decision-making in agriculture is key. And what you're saying is particularly interesting because it's not about just the data, but it's actually also about how you translate that data in a way that can be understood and used. Especially because we cannot forget, like any product or service, you need to keep in mind who you sell to. And there's been a shift in agriculture where you have newer generation entering the space in this category. But the reality is that a lot of them are not necessarily super tech savvy still today. And that represents a huge percentage of the population. So you guys are doing the toughest job, which is all the educational effort, going out there, doing the evangelization, etc. And for that, you need to keep in mind who you talk to. Absolutely. And just having like a super techie, cool data platform, that's great. But you have to go an extra step. And then I think as we come along in history, just the data collection and the analysis will be great. And maybe you need to do a lot less of the explanation. But it's not just about like, here is a bunch of things that can be interesting for you, but like really going that extra mile on like how you implement that, how you keep on measuring over time, how can you keep on sharing and nurturing that data feedback loop, because at the end of the day, that's how all the models are going to end up working. So I think that's super interesting. The other point that I wanted to mention is around farmers, communities, and support, which is exactly what Natalia was talking about. Like, farmers are at the core of this all, and they need to feel supported to engage in change and to cover the short-term challenges Absolutely. Of the transition to using more sustainable practice. Basically, if you think of it, those people, like, very often they don't have a lot of cash to sustain a transition, and they need to think of not necessarily like short-term, but relatively short-term benefits, because that's what is going to let them go into the next season and go into the next season and so on. So when you make a transition to regenerative agriculture, you might lose 1 or 2, even 3 seasons. Yeah. And then how do you do that? And then also the next step of it is like, assume you made the transition because it was relatively easy for you, or you are in an area that can allow the transition faster. Then you are a very small play into a world that is set up in a way in which all farmers belong to a COP, and that COP is talking to the big ag. Yeah. And then you don't have a competitive situation anymore, because you're the small farmer that doesn't really, that can't really go and be competitive. So you need to, number one, buy cheaper, and number two, sell to relatively bigger groups if you do the group selling. So it's exactly what Natalia was talking before. Yeah. So it's a lot about communities, but it's also about financing and insurance of those people. And today there are very, very few solutions to take care of basically the protagonist of this whole story. Then there's other ways to do this. One can be around inputs, biologics, and seeds. So all the innovation that you mentioned also, Aaron, before, around organic fertilizers and pesticides, the seeds that require less chemical inputs, the ways to reduce the use of nitrogen-based fertilizers, and so on. So I think there is a lot. It's a little bit more like biotech, because you need to get into all the formulation and so on. But it's also an area that I think can make a huge impact on the whole regenerative agriculture space. Then there is everything around measurement of carbon sequestration in soils, which is necessary for instance, the very a very discussed topic, which is the carbon credits. Yeah. That, by the way, could be also a way to incentivize farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture, because it can be a great way of financing. Now, today it's hard to get into this, because it's very hard to do the proper measurement of the carbon sequestration and also all the impacts. So you get into this whole thing of the measurement and verification, where there's some companies working on it, but we still don't yet have like a proper view and proper technology in order to kind of establish a real protocol. That also ties with certification and labeling. And it's a little bit what I was saying before. Ultimately, consumers are the biggest force to drive change. Yeah. And as we raise awareness, more people will want to consume food coming from regenerative agricultural practices, including meat even. But for that, we need a system that enables consumers to know how the food has been produced. So if you think of like all the nutritional stuff that you have in any food, that wasn't that common, like, 40 years ago. So getting to some type of information / labeling, like the Nutri-Score that now you have in many products and so on. There's ways in order to raise that awareness. Because like when we go to the supermarket, I don't know. I can know whether it's eco-friendly. I can know sometimes where it's being produced, but I cannot really know how it's being produced. Yes. And regenerative agriculture precisely depends on how it's being produced, and that how is key, and consumers don't know. So I think there is a lot to be done in that certification and labeling aspect. And maybe the last one to mention, although there's a few others, but the last one to mention is around waste reduction, which is somehow related to the whole topic. It's interesting to know that a third of all food produced in the world is wasted. A third is like incredible. So the changes in diet and the reduction in food waste are probably some of the most impactful ways to reduce emissions, and it can be implemented at every consumer level. But again, there is no real way to measure that besides also obviously the consumers taking the ownership on it, right? So it's on us to kind of reduce some of the portions, like not be that driven by aesthetic of how a product looks, like kind of budget better what we want or what we need and how much we need of it. And the same that comes, it comes across the whole supply chain, by the way. It happens at the very beginning of the supply chain with all the technology that is required to preserve food, but then it also happens a lot at the retail and consumer level. So it's really across the whole chain that we need some type of innovation to make it better. So I'll pause there. But those are just a few ideas that I think can be interesting and can make regenerative agriculture a real thing.
I do like the point that you say about the consumer. Natalia, do you think that we think that it's a farmer center just to push the regenerative agriculture, but do you think that we need to change the mind of the consumer? We need to change our minds in consuming?
Certainly we do, but I think we're doing fine. Like 5 years ago, no one knew about organic food.
That's true.
And now it's everywhere. So I tend to be a very optimistic person, but I think we are doing it so far good.
Yes.
Of course, there's a lot of work to do, but I think we're in the right direction. But the point also that I want to make clear is that it's not only the consumer who has to change his or her mind. It's also that the system has to allow the consumer, if he wants, to get those sort of to those sort of products, to get to products that are produced sustainably in an easy and convenient way. And this is something that we are yet not enabling. Like, I am the biggest freak of organic food, but still nowadays I find myself buying conventional fruits and vegetables because it's not so easy to get to them.
Yes.
So it is important, I believe, that all these people that have projects in mind or that have a company, a startup, that helps in any way the delivery of these products that are produced in a sustainable way towards the consumer. It can be consumers, but it can also be the restaurants, the retailers, the hospitals, even the schools, to develop their ideas, because it's a lot of work to do still. It's not only a matter of changing the awareness of the consumers, it's also of providing them with the means to get to those sort of products. Yeah,
it's quite crazy because I absolutely agree with you that 5 years ago we never think to buy something organic, or I think myself I used to do it. We pay more for this, but when you go to the farm, it's really difficult to produce something organic. It's absolutely difficult to produce something organic, especially in a scale. To produce something organic in a scale is so difficult. And it's something important that we sometimes buy something organic, but as Cayetana said, we don't used to know really what's happened with this. Maybe say organic. And I know some cases that no are. But I think that we, as a consumer, we need to keep paying more for this because it's so difficult for the farmer, it's so expensive to produce something that is organic. And I think that we need to try to find solutions. And we need to be honest that the same way that we produce, we are not going to be able to feed the future. Something that we need to change. Maybe, as Cayetana said, maybe the 30% of the food in the world, that's a lot, that's a lot. Maybe with only changing this, we will be able to with the same way that we produce, to be alive with the food that we have. And just in conclusion, we have 3 minutes. Let's have 1 minute per person. Cayetana, it's your minute of conclusion.
Yeah, no, I agree with what Natalia was saying. Actually, I don't want to come across as pessimistic, but actually quite the opposite. Is I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think we now know so much more than we knew only a few years ago, even a few months ago. So we only need to kind of collect that knowledge, and as investors, we also have the responsibility to keep that mindset of what is sustainable, what's making the world a better place, and so on and so forth. Doesn't mean we will invest in every single company coming out of this, but I think it's really important that we find the right type of financing for those companies that are actually feeding the future in many ways. And we know, that's the thing. That's the important thing, is we know. So now it's about execution. Before we didn't know a lot of this, and now we know. So it's more like a optimistic way of saying we need to go and do it.
Yeah. Cool. Natalia?
I would say we have the tools, we have the technology, we have the knowledge to improve the way we produce and the way we consume. So let's just put all together our forces from the investment side, from the startup side, from the consumer side, from the farmer side. Let's come all together. Let's try to cooperate. Let's try to talk with each other. And let's try to create a better future. I think we have all the ingredients.
Yeah, that's great. From my side, I think that if we as a consumer, we keep asking for this kind of food, healthy, organic, closer of where we are, and that's going to be really important for the future, because the market will give you what you are looking for, you know. And I think that's going to be really important from the tech side, from the technological companies, is help to the producers to give metrics. Every company have metrics, and the agriculture don't have metrics. If I produce shoes, with X table of wood, I have, I don't know, 100 shoes. But in agriculture, there are no metrics. And that's the way that we need, from my side, what I can do, is provide information to give metrics to produce with less chemicals and more production to feed the future. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for the summit. Thank you, Cayetana. Put your hands up together for Natalia. Goodbye and have a good luck.